There's been obviously some breaking news with Ben Arbuckle being hired as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. And there we go. Thank you, T. And as such, T, what do you think? And then I guess I can kind of get in mind, but curious. I know that. What do you think, just as like an athlete getting a new coach in? If you were there, what are you looking for and stuff of that sort?
So I think it's good because signing day is what, Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the 4th? Wednesday? So these players that are, one, still here on the roster, and two, considering coming in, need to know who's going to be their coach, because you can change. As someone who had a coach leave before my signing day, I was contacted by other coaches that were like, you can leave because your coach left. And I mean, I chose not to, but I don't blame anybody who would, because you sign who you want to play for. And if that changes, it can change your opinion. I think for the players that are staying, you want to have that person come in, build that relationship, see whom he might be bringing. That would be interesting to me. But I'm glad that we were able to get the hire done before signing day, because I was hoping it was going to be yesterday. The fact it came in later today worried me a little bit. So it was a little birthday surprise to figure out we got a new OC. I need to stop saying that's one, but I really am just thinking about it.
Fair.
But I think it's good for the players, future players, to know who's coming in. Just curious to see what more portal news there will be, because as we've seen the last few years, it's crazy and it's always hard because you're gonna lose some people you love usually, and you don't want to see that. But what about you?
So we had a space on this actually whenever Seth Luttrell first got moved on from, and I had some thoughts typed out for that space, and I went over, and I kind of just wanted to rehash them because I think it's a little bit of what attracted Arbuckle to the position, or to Oklahoma. And besides it just being Oklahoma, and you're coming from a non-power forward to a blue blood, top 5 program all time. A couple of the things that I was thinking about, if you are Brent Venables, first off, you like the offenses that complement his defenses most of the time are, obviously you want a deep offense that scores, so you can look at average scoring. And over the last 2 years, I have some notes here just written. He's ranked 10th in the nation in pass yards, 12th in touchdowns, to interception ratio, 13th in passing efficiency, 20th in scoring at 35 a game, and 22nd in touchdowns from scrimmage at 101. So there's a lot of phrases like people speak, numbers scream, and whenever you see consistency like that, it shows that he's able to adjust whoever's on personnel. He had Cam Ward, obviously. He has Mateer now, and he had another quarterback between there, and I'm just, the name's blanking me. But Cam Ward, wasn't a highly recruited guy. Obviously, he's at Miami now. He's going to be probably second or third quarterback taken. I don't even think he was a ranked recruit. I think he was 0 stars. Mateer, I think, was a 2-star, 3-star guy. And you see kind of what they're doing at Washington State, and then we see what Cam Ward is now doing at Miami. And I think it shows that he can, one, develop quarterbacks, and two, is able to see the strengths and weaknesses of the players he has on him and scheme them into the best scenarios that fit what they are able to do, which obviously we saw a struggle with a little bit this year. And we're getting to some of that here in a little bit. But, for offensive coordinators, there were some stats that were pretty interesting. There are, I believe, out of the last since 1999, since Mike Leach and through Jeff Levy of last season, 8 offensive coordinators went on to be football FBS head coaches from leaving Oklahoma. So if you're a guy that's as young, first off, as Ben Arbuckle is at 29, and you have an idea or a dream to be a college football head coach, coming to Oklahoma obviously gives you a good chance to do that. And it's been proven by the track record and by who has left and become successful at other programs. You also get the benefit, I think, of Arbuckle. You look at, if you're going to get a coaching job, you look at what talent do you have on the roster already, and then you look at your ability to attract talent to your college. Obviously, Oklahoma has a lot of talent, and trust me, we're going to get into the medical stuff here in a little bit. But assuming all that is back, you're going to have a ton of talent on the offense, and you're going to have a lot of talent back, and you're going to have, like C has brought up multiple times, a lot of experience because of the players that got reps this year that normally wouldn't have gotten much playing time at all without the injuries that were in front of them. And you also look at how, recruiting and how you're able to recruit. Oklahoma's always been able to get good offensive players on campus. They've always been able to get good quarterbacks on campus. They have talented people all around them. You also look at what he's coming into in an NIL perspective. You're coming into a year when Brent Venables is pretty much going to base his tenure at Oklahoma on you being successful, on you turning around this hydra of inefficiency on offense. And if you're able to do that, to be able to do that, you obviously are going to have investment in the portal and NIL. I think that is going to be a big hit for on the offensive side of the ball specifically. You got to go out and get receivers. As much as I think the receivers that are hurt can come back and be really, really good, and a few of them be NFL type guys, they aren't available right now. And the best ability, as you always hear, is availability. And if they aren't consistently available, you can't go out and rely on them to be there next year. So that was kind of my thoughts right there. I mean, we can get into kind of what he likes to do, but what are your thoughts kind of that's what I've said, or just kind of anything else you thought of just after the hire?
I'm back to the hire. As you had mentioned, BV's basting. I don't like saying BV. It doesn't come off well. Brent Venables.
Just say Venables.
That comes out better for me.
Say Vinny.
Vinny. I have a cousin.
Say BVs. Beeves. Say Beeves.
Beeves. Old Brenny.
Yeah.
I digress. Brent Venables is hanging his hat on this hire. And so, respect to Ben Arbuckle for wanting to come.
Yeah, good point.
If I went into a job, they're like, hey, you have to do a dang good, and you don't have to just do a good job. You got to do a dang good job. Like, you have to be near perfect and have your first year here be a well-oiled machine right off the bat. That's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I personally would be willing to take that type of risk unless, one, I was super confident in myself. And then 2, I knew the talent that was going to be there. And then 3, like you mentioned, you truly think it is going to, you don't think of it as a 1-year thing and you are investing for your future. But that is a lot of pressure because I'm sure if Brent Venables goes, you go. You wouldn't think that you'd be the next in line for a head coach if as a first-year OC at OU. Maybe. But yeah. I don't know. I think that takes a lot of courage, and anybody willing to step into that position, I feel like.
You got my respect.
Yeah, my respect for sure.
But do you think that? I just feel like, and tell me if you think I'm crazy. I feel like maybe maybe I'm thinking too much about what they can do at that level. But I feel like if you're going to take that position and you're going to take that risk, do you think you've talked to some of the players already that you might be worried about leaving and have shored up those kind of relationships? Have you? Obviously you've talked to the coaches that you're going to be with, and we can get to BV's comments. But.
I would think so. I don't know if maybe you've talked to the players, but you've talked to, the head coach who has talked to the players. I don't know before before you've signed on the dotted line, you would have talked to the players just because, or maybe you've talked to a few players. Maybe they brought in a few leaders on the team, like, hey, what do you think of this guy? And did it that way. I don't know. I'm not in those rooms, but I would think that you would take that leap knowing who you have coming back. If you take that leap and all of your offensive players are going to be gone, then, that's really telling. So I don't think it's crazy to think that he knows to some extent who would be returning and who would not be. Hopefully, even to an extent, he would know who is on the fence and maybe could sway them to not leave. That would be great too. But only time will tell, truly. Yeah.
And for me, and by the way, if you're wondering like who leaves because he's coming in, Venables said in his press release that he's excited to see the offense reach new heights under Ben's guidance, working alongside the rest of our offensive staff and Coach Joe John Finley, Bill Bedenbow, obviously DeMarco Murray and Emmett Jones. So it doesn't look like you're going to get any position coaches come in to take their positions. If maybe you thought that was an option or something of that sort. So looks like those guys are going to stay. I know most OU fans will hear Joe John and think he needs to go. I'm such, and this, we're not getting this conversation yet. I think that it's such a hard time. It's such a hard place to be for even coaches because you had lost so much on that side. Whenever you're having to highlight guys that may not have been ready to be highlighted. And obviously there was some of that whenever, it shouldn't have happened regardless. But, some of those people aren't guys that are made to be, the focal point of offenses. Right. They'd be really, really good additional complementary pieces. And I think they will be next year for sure. For me, the last thing just on the hire in general, and T was right, like you are going to obviously there's the upside and the risk. I mean, the guy has only coached, I think, at the college level for 4 years. His first job, for those who don't know, he graduated college. I read about him a couple weeks ago when they really started. Graduated college, thankfully, and then he started working in the financial sector and hated it. So much so that he took a volunteer gig at Houston Baptist, I believe, which is now it's called a different college now, but it was called Houston Baptist at the time, and it was volunteer only. I think it was the first 2 years. He didn't even get a paycheck for coaching. He just wanted to be around it and learn, which, you kind of respect in a different way. That a guy just wants to get into the meeting rooms and on the practice field. From there, he went to Seminole High School in Texas and became their offensive coordinator in 2020. He graduated high school in 2014. It doesn't matter really. I mean, if you know how to do it, you know how to do it. But like at 2014, I know, but like the thought of being Oklahoma's, like 10 years later being the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma,
the thought of you being offensive coordinator at Oklahoma now would blow your mind.
Yeah. at 32. Yeah. Someone else is 30.
Yeah.
So to be that young and only have 4 years of really of total offensive coordinator experience. His first gig was at a high school. 2 years later, he follows Kittle when Kittle gets the job at where was he? I believe it was at it was not Washington State. It was at it's blanking my mind. But anyways, at that first college he was in, and then whenever he gets to go to Washington State after Kittle goes to Texas Tech to be the offensive coordinator there. It is Western Kentucky. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, so you get all that experience. And if this was a hire from a guy that had been there 1 year, maybe I would be more worried because you don't know really. 1 year can be a hit and miss, especially if you have guys that are just absolute dudes and you are just better athletes than everyone in a non-Power 4 conference. Certainly you can be lucky and just have better athletes than everybody, or you can repeat that in another year when you lose Cam Ward and you lose a lot of that talent they had, and you are just as good in a lot of factors, better in some others. It shows that it wasn't just I lucked into this kind of thing. I had all-time athletes at a conference in which you can still out-athlete a lot of people. And I think that kind of leads us into some, if you were going to have any concerns, because obviously it's high risk, high reward with a young coach. And that's not totally experienced, it's especially not experienced at the SEC level of football he's about to face. If you had a coach come in and you're looking at, hey, it's a young coach, might relate to the players more, but doesn't have that experience that a coach that you maybe just had did. Maybe it hits out of the park, but there's a risk there.
There is a risk, but I look at our last young hire, Zach Alley, who seems to be doing pretty well. Granted, I think BV may still have a hand a lot in that defense, but I've also heard he's taken a huge steps back from being that involved, so it can happen. How old was Lincoln when we hired him?
It's like 32.
Okay, so he was rather young too. So it can happen when you are good at what you do. Maybe. You're good at what you do, and I hate giving him any credit, but it is what it is. So I think it is good because you can relate to the young guys a little bit better than somebody older. Not to say that somebody older can't, but just generationally, I think he has shown talent. So we'll see. Now, I do worry about the translation from Washington State to the SEC. That is, objectively, competition's going to be bigger, faster, stronger. Environments are going to be more hostile. It's just, it is a big jump, but he's willing to take it on. So some coaches like to dodge the SEC, and so he's not. He's actively coming. So. And
I just want to add on to the coaches staying that. A lot of it has to do with recruiting in terms of who you're going to keep. Because we've said this before on the show, and I've really learned this. My dad obviously recruited at the college level, and the ins and outs of that I kind of heard from him. But a lot of the recruiting in terms of just your actual positional guys are done by the position coaches, and when those relationships are made, it's really hard, especially this close to signing day, to fire a coach, then clean house at the position levels, and then expect all that to not be impacted. And Oklahoma has two highly ranked recruits on the offensive line, and Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, one being a 5-star, another being just outside the 5-star mark. Both offensive tackles, both going to be two guys that are supposed to be, early impact guys at Oklahoma that you want to keep on.
You also have the young guys that signed for him last year that got a few minutes this year, but not a ton of snaps.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have they came big for him too, and you don't want to lose them because they say, hey, I still have my red shirt or I still have 2 or 3 years left. I'm going to go either where he goes, should he get another job. If he doesn't want to coach anymore, then, fine. Or I want to go somewhere different. And so I think that was the most important. And that, to me, Beat and Ball was the one, to me, most number one on the list, does not need to go. And people can argue with me on that, but it was mostly for, to me, recruiting. The recruiting side of it. I mean, obviously he knows a ton of football and he is a good coach. People weren't happy with how his line did this year, but they had moments. They did get better for what it was worth. But for me, it was more on the recruiting side of the ball, how much you need to keep him. On a personal side, I just love Emmett Jones. I think he's got a lot of energy. I think the players really like him. And beyond the injuries, the wide receiver room was stacked and had a lot of talent. And I like him just in general. Those are my two had to keeps. One from a logistical side, and then one from a just, I guess, a personal side. It could be logistical, if you will, but I just liked him as a coach, and I saw that impact he seemed to have. Other than that, there was nobody that I hate saying that, but there's nobody that I was gonna, I guess, go to war for in my mind, if you will. Not that I have any say in it. But
you liked all of them. But I did. There were two, if you're taking stock, you had to take
offensively, anyways. Right. This is not. I'm not counting the defensive staff because Todd Bates. I really liked him too personally. He was awesome.
There's a reason they're great recruiters, right?
The reason he's a good recruiter.
Yeah. Same with Jones. Same with him and Jones.
Right. And so on for the offensive side of the ball, I mean, personally, I thought they were all they seemed great. But if a coach had, I guess, I'm just going to stop it there.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But at the end of the day, to me, I am happy that nobody is going. What it sounds like. We're not an insider, so we don't know that for sure. But from that statement, you would make it sound
She's an insider.
Stop saying that. No, I'm not.
I'm kidding. We are not.
We are not. Dang it, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. Let's see.
But from that statement, it doesn't sound like anybody is leaving, and I am personally okay with that.
Yeah.
And I'm actually pretty happy about it because I like who we have coming in, and I like who we have now who can stay.
Yeah. And, people will talk about a lot of the position coaches, DeMarco, if it's DeMarco, Beatonbow, Emmett Jones, I think mostly gets a pass from most fans because of the plague that hit that receiver room. But, I think some of it is when injuries stack up, specifically on the offensive line, it feeds into everything. So, and granted, the running backs weren't great, but they were, a lot of that. Saltrek misses 4 games for an injury. I think it's hard for BV to sit there and say, look, I think it was just the coaching alone that was the reason that we had some of the issues we had on offense. And for him to just kind of say, I'm going to now, because of that performance, just take those jobs and go find new guys. I think he wants to see them with a full deck and see kind of those guys. Yeah, and I know some people will, they'll go out to Marco and say, and I don't think all of it's misplaced, but they'll go out to Marco and say, why didn't you play this guy? Why are you playing this guy? And, you got to give him credit. So he got Xavier Robinson on, at Oklahoma when he wasn't the highest ranked recruit, when he was just an Oklahoma guy. And
got him off the scout team.
Yeah.
We mentioned either in our live or the post game that he was upset, quote unquote, upset to leave scout team. He wanted to continue to better himself outside of the field, but when his number was called, he made the most of it. So that to me can show, because a lot of people were like, oh, where's this kid been all year? Like, if that kid wanted to be there and was thriving there when we had at the time who we thought was going to pan out before injuries, and Javonte was doing better. But, it is what it is.
It's you got to give him credit for getting him there, and especially when he's not the highest ranked recruit. He's not like a big 5-star, 4. I think he was a 3-star guy out of high school, I believe. Maybe a 4, but
I hate the stars system.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Often doesn't pan out.
Yeah, and it's hard to really to know.